The inspectors were informed by the ride's foreman that during the ride cycle, one of the sensors that detected if restraints were open or closed malfunctioned and sent a signal to the ride's control system that restraints were unlocked during the ride. The ride's control system worked as intended and stopped the ride to prevent any harm. Though no restraints actually came unlocked, the ride did automatically stop in the middle of the ride cycle. This required riders to be evacuated from the ride. After riders were evacuated, the ride's foreman repaired the ride and ran a test cycle for state inspectors. The ride was then reopened. That night, it was discovered that the restraint release button on the ride's control panel had stopped working. To solve this, the ride's operators from now on would open up the control cabinet at the base of the ride and bridge a connection using another jumper wire to unlock restraints at the end of every ride cycle to allow riders to exit. This issue was not reported on the ride's nightly maintenance report. This same issue caused the ride's other rider vehicle to stop spinning as intended. The ride's foreman went to fix this issue the same way Joshua Macaroni had, by installing a jumper wire. This had the unintended effect of the ride's control system now seeing all restraints as locked and secured, regardless of their actual position. Accordingly, the safety light was now always illuminated. Vortex operated without incident on the 22nd and 23rd. On the night of the 24th, as the ride cycle came to the end, the platform operator entered the ride area and opened up the electrical control cabinet. He bridged the electrical contact using a jumper wire, allowing the restraints to unlock as he had been doing for the past 2 days. As riders began to exit the ride, it started to move again for reasons that are not clear. The passenger vehicles started to invert with riders holding on for life, and others falling to the grated metal floor below, as all restraints were now unlocked. Fairgoers rushed into the ride area to assist the injured. The ride's foreman, who was running the controls for the ride, panicked. He brought the ride to an eventual stop, but did not press the E-stop, which would have immediately stopped the ride. On August 7th, 2016, around noon, Verrückt was operating in a deteriorated state. The metal structure was rusting due to the rushed construction, and the crude mat-based braking system was partially missing, as the section on the second hill had failed roughly a week prior. Raft B was loaded with 3 riders, 2 adults and 1 child, who combined weighed just under the maximum allowed weight of 550 pounds. Raft B had returned to service a few weeks prior and was noted in the previous day's daily report to be running really fast. The group of 3, with the child sitting in the front, which was the correct seating position according to the ride's designers, were sent down the slide's 168-foot drop. The lack of a brake on the bottom of the first hill caused the raft to go airborne on the top of the second hill, sending the child and other riders directly into the steel support for the netting. The child suffered a decapitation. The 2 adults suffered skull fractures and cuts. Raft B continued into the runout at great speed. The ride was closed and the investigation was launched. On March 24, 2022, at Icon Park in Orlando around 11 p.m., Orlando FreeFall was operating normally, or as normally as this ride was capable of being operated at the time. Riders were being loaded from the line and onto the gigantic ride. A larger rider was directed by the operators to sit in seat number 1 as it was known to accommodate larger riders. The adjusted restraint was pulled down by the rider to a restraint opening of around 6 inches. The adjusted magnetic sensor on the back of the rider's restraint read as it being secured, and the safety light on the ride and the control panel read as secured for seat number 1. The operators saw this light was illuminated and moved on to other seats. After visually verifying most seats in a seemingly random order by one operator, the ride was allowed to be dispatched by the operators. The ride's control system, reading every restraint as being closed to a safe position, started the winch to pull the rider vehicle to the top of the tower. The restraint on seat 1 was visually higher than all other seats on the ride. Instead of noticing this, an operator near seat 1 joked with the other riders on the ride to secure their seatbelts, even though none were installed on the ride. The ride ascended its 430-foot tower, rotating 4 times on the way up. At the top of the tower, the seats tilted 30 degrees and the catch car detached from the rider vehicle. The ride then plummeted down the tower at nearly 80 miles per hour. Near the bottom of the ride, the rider vehicle passed over magnetic brakes that caused a rapid deceleration of the rider vehicle as designed. This exerted over 4 Gs of force on all riders, including the rider in seat number 1. The rider in seat 1 pressed hard against the restraint with so much force that the restraint opening became as wide as 10 inches. The rider slipped through this opening and fell to the ground at great speed. The rider was killed after striking the paved ground. One operator rushed over to the scene and began questioning the operator who assisted in checking seats, asking, and the operator responded with, Emergency services were called and the ride was shut down for investigation. Around 12:05 p.m., Scream at Longshan Park in Pingyang, China was operating as normally as it was capable of doing. Longshan Park had just held its grand opening a few minutes earlier, and Scream was loading some of its first ever riders. As a group of riders were loading into the ride, something, whether it be an operator's mistake, or perhaps something as simple as a gust of wind, caused the lever in the ride's control booth to move forward. This started the electric motor that controlled the ride. The ride raised rapidly into the air and began spinning during its normal cycle. 3 of the loading riders moved away quickly and were only thrown a few meters. These riders would sustain more minor injuries and would make full recoveries. 2 riders attempted to hold themselves into the ride and would be thrown out as they experienced the strong negative G's near the ride's peak. These riders would fall from the full height of the ride and would die from their injuries. The ride and newly opened park would be closed by the local government soon after. The park's owner would be arrested as the park and the rides in the park were missing required documentation to operate, and this had contributed to the accident. The park would be shut down after operating for just a few minutes and would be demolished in 2018. On August 25, 2023, Hairpin at Birch Bay Water Slides was operating normally. Around 12:52 p.m., a rider descended the slide. After exiting the double down area, they slid up onto the splash guard on a sharp turn. As they did this, the splash guard, weakened by thousands of other riders sliding over it, broke, sending the rider's right foot through the segment of missing and damaged fiberglass. The rider's foot and leg contacted the broken fiberglass and rusted steel fasteners, causing serious lacerations. The injured rider continued down the slide into the runout pool, where they were assisted by lifeguards who were alerted by the rider's yelling. The rider would be transported to a hospital where they would make a recovery. The park would close for the remainder of 2023, and the investigation would begin.